Lancaster Station deputies and SEB deputies pursued a gunman suspected of attempted murder and several other crimes. He went into a very dark, wide-open field, and all of you who know Lancaster know once you get off the road, there's a lot of territory out there to see and to lose sight of in. For more than 6 hours, SEB made multiple requests for this suspect to do the simplest of things. Put down the weapon, extend your hands, come out, and surrender. He didn't get a clue. Well, a plan to disarm this man was spearheaded by the unit's team members, Detective Rob Harris, Sergeant John Hanson, and Detective Ron Green. Now, SEB, the Special Weapons Team, is in front of this guy, downrange. He's pointing the gun at them. They decided, you know what? Let's go in the back door, which they did, but not by themselves, with the help of a little friend called Andros. That's a robot. Through the robot's camera, that suspect could be viewed lying on his stomach. He was looking at SEB deputies. His gun was not in his hand. It was at his feet and slightly behind him to the side. Surprise. Andros, under the control of these men, moved forward, the claw goes out, and all of a sudden, it's got the rifle. And when the suspect turned around and saw that all of a sudden he had no weapon, well, the situation of the dynamic changed. The suspect surrendered to deputies without incident. There was a family law matter in one of those courts, and after hearing a verdict, a woman stated she was going to commit suicide. She ran from the courtroom to the 5th floor, climbed over the glass barrier, and hung over the balcony from the railing. Deputy Joseph Bennett was alerted to the situation. He initiated a radio broadcast, "Jumper on the 5th floor," and ran up the escalator to try to engage this woman. She was already over the glass barrier. He used both hands to grab one of her wrists, her left wrist, to keep her from falling, and then hung on for dear life, for her life. Deputy Danny Delgadillo arrived at the railing, and both he and Deputy Bennett clung to the woman, trying to lift her over the railing. She wasn't helping matters. She was struggling. She wanted to drop. It wasn't until a third deputy, Ivan Delatorre, arrived that they could hoist this woman back over the barrier and onto the ground. She didn't sustain any injuries. She was later transported to the Pacific Hospital, and they put a 72-hour 5150 hold on her. But she's alive. The broadcast call is one that makes your throat and your chest tighten a little bit. Man with a gun. Now, Detective Judge and Deputy Zabala observed the suspect had his right hand on a handgun in his waist, and he was actively trying to pull that gun out and use it against the deputies. Rather than using deadly force, which would have been legally permissible at the time, Detective Judge, Deputy Zabala chose to use personal weapons and control holds to stop the suspect from removing the firearm. Deputy Allende stopped behind the car, activated his emergency lights. The suspect suddenly turned his car west across the street, Deputy Allende following. With the deputy in full view, the suspect pointed a pistol out of the driver's window and opened fire. Multiple shots. Deputy Allende dropped his motorcycle and sought cover behind him. He returned fire and then discovered he'd been hit by the bullets. He'd been hit on his right wrist, and his right hand wasn't functioning. He then applied a tourniquet to his right arm. Keep in mind, he's bleeding while doing this. And when assisting units arrived, he directed them while he tended to his own injuries. It was later determined he hadn't been hit once, not twice. He'd been hit 3 times. The wound to his right wrist, the second shot to his stomach that had been stopped by his body armor, the third shot, take a look at the screen, stopped by a G-Shock watch.